Hello amateurs, and welcome to this short season finale where I'll share with you everything I've learnt about creating a podcast, including a couple of embarrassing stories, the themes that have reappeared throughout this series, some podcast stats about downloads and the most popular episodes, a review of the seismic events of the current season, a tribute to two incredible rugby men who have sadly left us recently, and a look ahead to next season, whenever that will be, the future of rugby in general, and what you can expect from the Amateur Rugby Podcast. Hello amateurs, welcome to this special season finale episode of the Amateur Rugby Podcast, here to help soothe your Sunday morning hangover with some elevated rugby chat about the grassroots of the game. I'm your host Tim, and today I'm locked away in South Wales, where I feel very lucky to have plenty of space to get my hours worth of exercise in each and every day. I'm going to kick off this podcast, this review, with lessons learned and reflections from my year of running this podcast. And one of the first real major benefits and things that I've really enjoyed is catching up with old friends, old teammates, people that I've played with from years and years ago, people like Tom Lindsay, which is over 10 years, people like Phil Waters from years ago, back in my days in Cheltenham, people that I wouldn't have I've just rung up and spoken to. And it's just been great to rekindle some old friendships and sit down face to face and chat about the old times. Another great benefit has been making new friends. So I've had a few people been recommended to me to have on the podcast. So it's been great to meet and talk to new people like Dave Phillips and the remarkable Lynn Evans. Another benefit, I'm just constantly learning about the game, whether that be about different clubs, different people, different players, or even technical stuff. Talking to Mike Friday, you just feel like you're constantly learning every time you're in his presence. He's a great coach because he keeps on learning himself. So whenever you meet him again, you're always bound to pick up something new. And I learned a lot about the women's game as well through my interview with Vicky Fleetwood, and just how much that's growing, but also still how much space there is to grow in the women's game. The other thing that's been a major benefit for me this season is just being out of my comfort zone. It's a big ask to just go and put something out there and see what happens. And that's definitely been a challenge for me, and none more so than the opportunity to record an interview with Ben Mercer. He had a book coming out in very short time, and I was in Greece, he was in Portugal, so we had to meet and record the interview over Zoom, which is just something I'm not very comfortable with. I don't even like talking on the phone normally. So to do that was incredibly tough, but we produced a great episode between us, and I think I'm very proud of it. And bizarrely, shortly after that, we met in real life an Isha Rugby Christmas drink up in Clapham. And I've never met anybody in real life, having met them only online before. So it was quite bizarre, but wonderful as well. And if you haven't got Ben's book yet, make sure you go and grab it. It's called Fringes. It's linked on my website. Yeah, go and give it a read. Now, it wasn't always perfect, and thinking back to episode 2 with my good mate Matt Townsend, we sat down to record late one evening, and we were both pretty tired, and we had to be up early the following day, but we desperately wanted to get it done. And I sat down and we pressed record and we got going, and then at some point during the interview, for some reason, I looked down at the recorder and it just said card full. And my heart sank, and we had no idea how much was recorded, how much wasn't. And it was just, it was a nightmare. But Towner, being the absolute gent that he is, just took it on the chin, and we just went back and re-recorded everything. And it was great to be able to do that. But I've learned my lesson there, hopefully. I'm not saying it will never happen again, but you never know. I always get my guests to check that the numbers are going round and it's actually recording and all that kind of stuff every single time now. And the other really embarrassing thing that happened, which you listeners won't be aware of, but Peter Short will, was that I sat down with Shorty to record his interview in his lovely school common area there, and did all the pre-stuff, all the Facebook Live video and all the chat and all that kind of stuff, and literally sat down to record and went, Peter Short, welcome to the Amateur Rugby Podcast. And then I had nothing. I literally had nothing. I prepared well. I had everything ready. And my mind just went completely blank. And there was no getting away from it. I had to stop the recording, stand up, walk around, actually go and look at my notes to try and figure out what it was that I was going to start the conversation with. And that's the only time that's ever happened, which was completely bizarre. But yeah, this does absolutely happen. The next thing about doing this podcast is you do the same thing over and over and over. So creating good, strong processes has been an absolute key factor in me producing what I hope has been a consistent and interesting and to have a podcast that's got quite, high production standards, I guess, around the photography and the social media and everything like that. So creating those processes has been literally a work in progress the whole season. But I feel like I'm getting there now, and it definitely helps in terms of reducing the workload, being more consistent with everything. But also it means that you don't have to be perfect. And that's been the last big learning point for me, really. I do have a bit of a perfectionism streak in me, and it would be easy to become completely tied down by that. But I've decided that it doesn't matter. Just get it out there, and it doesn't have to be perfect every single time. And I think in the current culture, it's actually even more important not to be perfect, because all these polished products that we see on TV and things like that, I think people are getting a little bit tired of, and people are more interested in things that are real and things that aren't perfect, and that, if you've got cracks or you've got some flaws, it's absolutely fine to show them. So that's been a big learning point for me, and I've been more willing, certainly, to do that throughout the series. Now, I didn't really start with any kind of agenda when I started this project, this thing that I'm doing. But as the series has gone on, as the season's gone on, I've recognized that there's been some themes that have come out throughout the shows. And playing stories is one of those. It's always great to reminisce with people that you've played with and against. You create this kind of movie in your mind of various key things that happened throughout your career. And they may not always be right. They may not always be accurate. And certainly it's possible that other people have got completely different recollections of the same stories. So it's been really fun to dig into some of those things, particularly with opponents, actually, and just share some of those experiences with you. Another big thing that's happened, a common theme, has been some drinking stories, which certainly historically was huge part of the game, and I think still is in many, many sectors, especially the amateur game. And the bonds that you make in the bars and the clubs, and just discussing the game after you've played it, whether it was a win or a loss, it makes no difference. Some of the real key cultures that come out of playing rugby. And talking of cultures, we've discussed a lot of club cultures and club traditions as well, some of which can be completely random and ridiculous, but it makes no difference. These are the things that bind us together. And, whether it's us at Old Corfians when we did yoga and headers and volleys for our match day warm-up, or whatever else it is, these club cultures and traditions are so important to our sport and the way we live. Another theme that's come up has been rugby and travel, and they're completely related. They go hand in hand, whether it's from rugby tours or sevens tournaments, or just rugby players tend to travel and play wherever they go. So I'm so fortunate now from my rugby playing days and coaching days. I've just got a network of people that I know all over the world. So whenever I travel, there's always a friendly face somewhere. So it's great to be able to link rugby and travel together in that way. Another theme that's come up regularly is coaching. And I think it's so important to me, because the coaches today and the coaches that are going to be coming into the game are the people that are going to shape the futures of our young players. And of course, they are the future of the game. And it's something that I'm very concerned about. And it's something that I'm very interested in. So if some coaching conversations that we have on this podcast can help improve coaching and help coaching be more accessible and more enjoyable for people, then that's definitely a great thing, because that will only increase participation, which I think is probably my primary goal now for this show. I want to encourage people to get out there and be involved in the sport in no matter what capacity, whether that's playing, coaching, being a committee man, whether you're a helper, whether you're a supporter, whether you just go down the club, whether you coach. I think I said coach already. Whatever it is, get involved in a club somehow, even if it's just going down and buying a couple of pints on a Saturday afternoon when you might not have done otherwise. Get down to your local club and be involved. That's definitely now my prime driver when I think about this show. And of course, the show's had some regular features on it as well. The Rugger Law Boar section has been widely loved by me and widely feared by my guests. There's no question that the conversations often go up and down throughout the recording of a podcast. Sometimes the energy's high, sometimes it's a bit lower. But every single time we get to the Rugger Law Boar section, the sound waves go up on the recorder and the energy just gets higher. And I think it's that competitive spirit that we all still have as rugby people. There's a challenge there and it's a game and we just love it. And I've loved doing it, and hopefully it's created some extra knowledge around the laws of the game. I'm not trying to say that I'm always right. I'm not. I don't think anybody ever is, but it's just more discussion about the laws, which I think is a really good thing. And then, of course, the stash section. Stash was always one of my favourite things when I was a player and a coach. And I just love some of the really unique things that have come out from the stash section of this of the show. Dave Phillips's Dartfordians Tammy Shanter was one of the most unique items that came up, and I think it was Stephen Corlett who mentioned the old Colfians poncho that was the prime piece of tour kit from a tour to South America. These things are legendary, and if they inspired you or your club to try and create something truly unique, then that would just be amazing and make me very happy indeed. Now, time for a few stats. We all love a few stats. The show has been downloaded around 9,000 times now, which just blows my mind. I started this with just my little recorder, me and my brother sat in his lounge, and now 9,000 times people have downloaded the show, which I'm just thoroughly humbled by, and it's amazing to me. So if you're one of those people, then thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for doing everything that you've done, whether it's sharing or whatever, but just 9,000 downloads at this point is amazing. The top guest at the moment, not that it's a competition, although some people think it is Dave Phillips from Dartfordians, who is currently on around 450 downloads, which again, for a single show is amazing. Just shows what a popular guy Dave is and how sort of engaging that show was. It was great to go down there and meet Dave and sit and chat with him. We chatted for more time off the recording than we did on it. And it's just great to go and meet him. And I'm looking forward to catching up with him again at some point in the future. The most competitive guest has definitely been Dave Phillips's clubmate, David Cheng, who, despite a monumental social media effort, is still just a little bit behind Dave Phillips. But keep going, Chengy. You'll get there, I'm sure. And it's been great to connect with you all on social media and via email newsletters as well. Just the numbers of people that have signed up has, again, just blown me away. It feels like every day just people are finding the show. Some of the reviews have been incredible, and several of which actually have indicated that my little podcast has inspired them to get back into the game in some capacity, whether that's looking for a club for their kids or trying to find a way to get back involved with their local club themselves. And that just makes me happy. So thank you for everybody that's connected via social media, that's signed up to the newsletter, that's left a review. And if you're one of those people that's been inspired to get back into the game, that's amazing. That's really amazing. And, well, what a season it was to start a podcast about rugby. There was so much to talk about this current season. And in some ways, I'm very glad that my show is not about current events, because I think it would have been absolutely swamped by all the other podcasts out there who are talking about the current events. But the incredible World Cup in Japan, the unbelievable news about the Saracens' wage cap issues, the cutting of the championship funding, all these things are enough for 2 or 3 years of rugby news, and they all happened in the same season. And then, of course, the ultimate news of this horrible coronavirus that's going wrong and has killed the season, which puts everything else into the complete shade. Nothing else is important now apart from getting everybody fit and healthy and safe and protecting our NHS, and hopefully no more people will have to die because of this. So this incredible year has just been blown apart. So please stay safe, stay at home, and let's help protect our NHS. Recently, as well, on a sad note, we've lost 2 great rugby people that I've come across in my time. Ron Seymour at Old Corfians and John Woody Woodward from Cheltenham Colts. Ron is just the most amazing club man, and it feels like every club has their Ron. You know, it feels like he's the guy that did everything. He's the guy that worked behind the bar, did the garden, cleaned the kit, played for the club, coached the club. He's a committee member, supporter, just always there, and a great guy to have around and chat about the game with. And you just knew that the club was absolutely in his veins. And these are the heroes. This is another theme actually from the show. These guys and girls are the heroes of rugby clubs around the world. Ron was that for Old Corfians, and he'll be badly missed. Rest in peace, Ron. And then John Woody Woodward, who was the founder and leader of Cheltenham Colts, which was where I played my rugby as an 18 and 19-year-old. He's just left a huge legacy of achievement and just turning boys into young men. And Woody was the leader of that. He drove standards. He made sure everything happened. And it was a great shame that this week, for his funeral, only 5 people could go and attend. But there's going to be an amazing celebration of his life at some point in September. And this week on Facebook, there's been an incredible outpouring of memorabilia from people's Colts rugby days, and the sharing of all this information is just a wonderful tribute to Woody, because he was involved in absolutely all of it. And it's been kind of quite heartwarming to see it and be a part of that on Facebook this week. So all those Cheltenham Colts out there, and I'm sure will join me in saying rest in peace, Woody. But now, looking forward, rugby will start again at some point. And World Rugby have pushed a few law changes that have been trialled recently and are going to come into the game when we kick off again. The first one's around ruck interpretation. And this is such a key area now for safety. It feels like the tackle area has been certainly addressed. We still wait to see whether that's fully resolved or not, but the ruck is the next thing that needs to be properly fixed. And it seems like the first responsibilities are the things that World Rugby want focused on. So the tackler releasing immediately, and then the ball carrier placing the ball immediately. And that means without this extra power roll that goes on and has been a part of the game for quite some time now. So if those two things are refereed as per the laws, how the laws are written, then I think we'll see a much faster game, and rucking will potentially return to what it looked like, some years ago, with it being much, much faster and the ball probably being much looser. If that is the case, then hopefully these shuddering contacts over the ball with people with shoulders below their hips will be certainly a minority, or if not a thing of the past. Time will tell on that, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see how World Rugby enforces that through their referees at the start of the next season. The other thing that's going to come into play is this new rule, the 50-22 rule, which is modelled from the Rugby League rule, where if you kick the ball and bounce it into touch from within your own half, and it bounces into touch within the opposition 22, then you'll get the throw to the line out. Now, I see this as quite an exciting and tactically and technically a really interesting challenge for players and coaches. Now, I can see two scenarios here. Firstly, I don't think that anybody's just going to be passing the ball from 9 to 10 and then getting a 50-22. I think defenders will be far too organised for that, certainly at the top end of the game. So there has to be some kind of setup play, and I can see it being similar now to where teams box kick and then box kick again because they know they've drawn the winger up or possibly the fullback as well. So I could see people box kicking and then looking for a 50-22 directly after that when one of those backfield players is already drawn in. The second way I see it happening is off a second receiver. So if you go from 9 to 10 and then the 10 passes again, chances are that winger will feel like he has to come up, and there'll be an opportunity then for a 50-22 as well. But I don't think it's going to happen all that often. And I think technically it's going to be difficult to do. But I think tactically you're going to have to get it exactly right. Otherwise the opportunities won't be there. Now, also in this break, there's a big opportunity for the game to just stop and take stock of exactly where it is. And I would love it if we come back to a game that has got a global calendar completely sorted out to the benefit of everybody. It's a huge, huge task. I've no doubt about that. But I feel like if we can't do it now, if the World Game can't do it now, then it will probably never happen. So that'll be my wish for this time off from the rugby game, that we managed to find out a solution to make the global calendar work for everybody. Now, what's in the future for the Amateur Rugby Podcast? Firstly, yes, there's definitely going to be a second series. I've loved doing this. It's been hard work at times, but I've just got so much out of it that it's a no-brainer. I have to carry on because it's just been so much fun. There's going to be more guests. In fact, I'd already organised loads. I'm supposed to be recording some. Actually, right this moment, I had a guest lined up to record an episode, but we'll revisit that and get that done in the future. And I'm also in the very early stages of trying to plan a big event for next summer. Time will tell on that. I've got to make sure it's viable, and we'll see. But if you want to know more about this event next summer, then make sure you stay in touch on social media or sign up to the newsletter on the website. Now, of course, when you do something like this, it's not just yourself that's involved. So I've got quite a few people to thank. Firstly, my guests. Just wonderful, wonderful people. Every single one of you, all of you immediately just said, yes, I'd love to do it. How do we get this done? So thank you so much for being so generous with your time and your energy and sharing it with all your groups of friends and family and all that kind of stuff. Thank you to my guests. Secondly, when I was dreaming this thing up this time last year, I had a very strangely formed thoughts, and I was trying to figure out exactly how it was going to work. And so my group of friends in a WhatsApp group, mostly from Old Colfians, really helped me figure out how this show was going to run and how I was going to do it. That focus group there was fundamental to how the show turned out. So thank you to everybody there. And lastly, thank you to you, the listener. I really appreciate the fact that you've downloaded and listened to however many number of episodes it is, whether it's one or all of them. Thank you so much. Thank you for being there. Hope that you're getting something out of every episode. And I'm going to keep going as long as you keep listening. If you want to be able to give something back to me, then I'm going to be asking for feedback in the next week or two. So make sure you stay connected on social media. AM Rugby Podcast on Twitter and Facebook. Amateur Rugby Podcast on Instagram. Or Best yet, sign up for the email list, which you can do on the website, which is amateurrugbypodcast.com. So before I sign off, just some final thoughts here about things going forward. The season's been a bit of a torrid time for the reputation of our sport, with the Saracens scandal and various other things. I urge you to do everything you can to uphold the values of our great game, especially on places like Twitter, where it's so easy to type before you think. Lead with kindness and inspire the next generation. As the professional game seems to get further away from the amateur, the bonds will surely be stretched, but we should remain positive about the changes, realise that we're not going to agree on everything, and try to make the best of what happens. Stay safe, stay at home, and I'll see you next season when at last we'll be able to get out and play.